Yeah, I got my work cut out for me. That's more like it. 0.92. Let's do that again. .05. Par of 1.10. All right. Have I mentioned how much I like this rifle? Oh man. 109. All right, one more. Hunting that elusive .97. 104. And that's okay because the par for this one is 1.10. So 104 is respectable. Not to mention, because I'm at a diagonal, I've technically probably added a few more feet as opposed to a straight linear 10 yards. I'm at a diagonal on this target, and that's a 6-inch target versus a 6x10, which is what I normally do this on. I guess I should probably show you guys what it is that I'm shooting at. This is a 10-inch gong from Challenge Targets. It's on a spring. It's on a spring-mounted setup so that the target flexes when it gets hit. And it also helps it ring out nice and clear. But what I'm shooting at it at an angle so the rounds have somewhere to go, because as you can see, rifle rounds, when they go head on, are causing a lot of damage on this plate. But anyways, there's a 6-inch ring that I essentially paint around. I put a thing here and I cover this area and I paint around it for any missed shots. And all the hits go here. My hits today are there, and there. So that's good. Okay, as you guys know, I like to have tight timelines for the things that I do. And there is always a why behind everything I do. The notation that I made for this video was one of the longer ones. Having tight timelines for your rifle standards makes you keenly aware of the necessity for a very simple and slick rifle setup. I already have that with my handgun. Okay. What that means is, with my Glock, the Glock is a very smooth handgun. If you consider that if a gun is designed for use rather than okay, let me put it this way. Form versus function. The Glock, the first time I saw a Glock, I went, that's butt ugly. What the heck is that? And then when I bought a Glock, when I was 20-something, my first Glock was a Glock 21 45 caliber, I then became keenly aware of the difference between form and function. Because the form of a Glock is just downright fugly, but the function of a Glock is flawless. When you consider that a Glock is designed for fighting, which is why it has no decocking lever, it has no safety, it has minimal controls, and the slide, with the exception of all the bougie stuff that I've had done to this one, the slide on a stock Glock is very smooth. The edges are always rounded, and the stock Glock sights are also rounded because the gun is designed to come out and be used rapidly and then put away and then go back to the long gun whenever possible. Because the focus of the Glock, you guys need to read a book. It's called Glock, The New Wave in Combat Handguns. I read it years ago before I even owned a Glock. And I loved it. That's what made me buy a Glock. If you understand the focus of what Gaston Glock was after in the Glock, you'll understand why the Glock is what it is. Well, when it comes to AR-15s by their very nature are bumpy, lumpy, and depending on which ones you get, they're kind of on the sharp side. Which is why I tend to, with the exception of my Mark 18, which is really more of just a toy than anything else, my fighting rifles, like this one, my 13-7, are set up very slick and very simple, most especially here on the forend. And the reason for this is, if I'm in a very tight space, like literally like something here and something here, and all I've got to work with is the ability to step in and then punch out and then step back in, by taking the stock off of my shoulder, I'm creating all the room that I need to maneuver with this gun. I'm not muzzling myself. I'm not muzzling any teammates, and yet I'm able to slip along very quickly behind something or someone, punch out, use my gun, and then come back in again. So you have to be able to do this with your rifle. And what ends up happening is, if you don't understand how the item is to be used, then you don't understand how to set it up. And then you end up making arguments for things that you want to add, not understanding the use of the item. And I'll give you a great example. Okay, I'll give you a great example of how training norms, my rifle standards, for example, how my rifle standards have changed my rifle setups. This is the small version. You guys have already, by this point, by the time that this video gets released, you guys will have already seen the rifle standards. I did the pistol standards and rifle standards in a very shortened format, and I put them and I just taped them right onto my clipboard here, so that wind is an issue out here. Today it's surprisingly still, but wind is a big issue out here. And the most difficult standard, or one of the difficult standards, on target, simulate stovepipe, pull trigger, clear rifle, fire one shot, 3 seconds. All right, let me set that up for you real quick, and I'll show you what I'm referring to. Ironically, this is actually a malfunction that I have seen more than my share of times. So I know that this is one that absolutely does happen in the training environment. Okay, you have a casing that's in a stovepipe, and this, with all honesty, is a worse stovepipe than what you would normally get. Typically speaking, stovepipes are not that far in. They're wanging out, and they're kind of like just waiting to get knocked out of the way. In fact, sometimes you can even pull on them and the bolt just goes home automatically. But the way this is done is 3.0. What ends up happening with this one is, and this is actually harder for me as a lefty, you basically bring the rifle up and you're going to get a click when you pull your trigger. At that point, you're going to have to tap and then realize, because whenever you get a click versus a bang, your instantaneous default motion, the instantaneous default motion is going to be to tap and then begin to visually assess. In other words, you are automatically tapping that rifle, like instantly, without even shifting your eyes from the threat to the gun to figure out what's even going on. It's just like the standard, let's get this gun up and running, smack the mag, make sure it's seated, and then run the bolt. But you know what? Tell you what, this is the best analogy I can give you, because this actually came to mind the other night. Those of you who have little kids, although my kids are not little anymore, if you have an incinerator, garbage disposal in your sink, something goes in there every once in a while, unless you're like me and you constantly keep a little screen, a little protector dealie in the bottom of the thing, right? Something goes in there. Hey mom, hey dad, there's something in the thing in the sink. Oh yay. So you go into the kitchen and you make sure that no one touches that switch, and you reach inside and you're like, oh, that's all kinds of wonderful, but you can't feel anything. Well, they swear there's something in there. So what do you now do? You reach forward for that switch and you instantaneously, you flick it on and instantaneously flick it off again. Why? Because you don't want this thing to finish getting up to speed before you realize there's something actually in there. So it's basically on-off, right? That's what I'm referring to when I say the second you get a click on a rifle, you are going to do an instantaneous tap on that gun to begin figuring out what the problem is before you actually fully get into figuring out what the problem is. When you have that mentality with the AR-15, it makes you that much faster. But the setup for it has to be set right, because if you don't have the room in your sling to maneuver that gun, and guys, I have this sling set intentionally tight. This gun is set tighter than I normally have it. I've got my chest rig on, which makes it even worse, but I want to prove the point. The bungee that I've sewn into the sling helps this type of thing, because what happened was when I started running these standards with the rifle, it actually dramatically changed my setup, but it further validated the sling setup, because there's one particular standard here where the rifle is hanging and you fire one shot in 2 seconds. So if it's hanging and you fire a shot, so that means safety on, weapon is in a storage position, which is just sort of hanging off to the side. Not like full-on storage here, but just hanging off to the side. and you're not standing like this, you're just standing like this. And all of a sudden you get a beep, and the gun has to immediately come up and has to be used. Well, if you don't have, the camera couldn't pick it up, but from hanging position right here, the bungee has already started stretching. All the way here, the bungee is totally stretched, and I can use the gun, and then the bungee takes it right back where I need it to be. If I didn't have that before, guess what I would have to do? Because if you're being honest with yourself, when you place a rifle, you generally take a little slack up so that it stays here. Because this is where your rifle hangs the majority. Remember guys, we carry rifles more than we use rifles. But in the training environment, we keep our slings slack because we're using our guns. Yeah, but you're cheating yourself. And that particular standard requires that you get in a real world position of carry. Remember guys, these are standards that I've had to come up with on my own to try to find efficiency of motion. And in so doing, I have found holes in my setups, and I've had to fix them. On target, simulate stovepipe, pull trigger, clear rifle, fire one shot. That particular standard, if your stuff is not squared away and set up for fighting, it's going to bite you in a heartbeat. And the way this one is done is, the gun is up. Let's see here. Yeah, on target. On target, simulate stovepipe. So, now what's interesting about that standard is 3 seconds. And what's the desired? Okay, so the desired is 2.0. I got it in 2.70. But like I said earlier in this video, I'm technically a little bit farther than normal because I'm not on the direct line to this target. And that target is only 6 inches as opposed to a 6 by 10. So I'm dealing with a smaller target at a slightly further distance than normal, but this is the standard that I prefer to work under so that I can make it that much harder on myself. What I'm driving at is this. Many times what I find when well actually I should clarify this point. I'm constantly in the comment section with you guys, and so many of you make comments that I learn from, because for every dim-witted comment that I get, let me put it this way, there are more of you out here that are sharp-minded individuals than there are of you out here that are dim-witted individuals. Because I learn a great deal from you guys here online, and that's where a lot of these videos come from. People ask a question and I realize that's something that I need to address in a video. And this particular video that I'm doing right now came from a comment that was made about efficiency of motion, the setup, and so on and so forth. And I realized the person is making a comment, but in reality they're asking a question. And I know for a fact, because I'm an FFL, I'm constantly getting emails from the Tennessee Instant Check system. And it's almost daily. In fact, I think it actually is daily. The system's down. We're trying to move through the transactions as fast as possible. The system is back up. Guys, there are millions of firearms in the hands of the Tier 1 citizens in this country, which is absolutely heartwarming, because what it really boils down to is tyranny has difficulty doing its evil when the citizenry is armed against it. I do these videos, and I do them bluntly and boldly, because I realize that a great many of the comments that I get are actually questions veiled as comments. I need your prayers. I've said this before. I need your prayers to try to find a piece of land like this. This is not mine. This belongs to a friend of mine from church who's generous enough to allow me access to this. I need to find this so that I can start offering training again on my own piece of land. Guys, I am bludgeoned and beaten on a regular basis for the types of videos that I do, for the very straightforward nature of the content that I release. And people seem to think that I'm fair game, which, guys, I used to be a police officer. I've literally had people try to kill me. Like, hands on. Like, here I was in it with someone who was trying to murder me. So, comments, whatever. Guys, I just sweep you people into the trash bin and I move on, because there are so many more of you out here that are appreciative of what I'm doing and are asking really great questions and making really great comments that are forcing me to go back and question my preconceived notions about something. So many of the comments and questions that I get from you guys have forced me to get out my own videos, because I've got all my videos archived, have forced me to get out my own videos and find a video that meets the question or comment that's been made. And I will sometimes sit there and I will watch a 12 or 15-minute video of my own and go, how did I allow myself to forget that? I mean, seriously, I sit there and I watch myself talking to myself and I go, how did I allow myself to forget that technique right there? And it's because you've heard this phrase, that dude is legit. He's forgotten more than most people will ever know. Well, the reason that happens is there's so much to know, so much to learn when it comes to firearms, just with this weapon. This weapon is infinitely more difficult than this weapon is. There's so much to learn to just reach proficiency that you can't possibly keep track of all of it until you actually get the weapon out and start working with it and you go, oh, that's right. That's that little trick that goes with doing this. Or, oh, that's right. I'm supposed to jam the muzzle in, rotate the gun, do blah, 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 to get the gun to do this because I'm doing it one-handed, I'm simulating an injury, da, 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 da. And I know that some of you right now are like, he's rambling, and then others of you are going, wow, there's knowledge being dropped. Guys, yes, I'm doing knowledge drops for you guys as much as I can. And I told you guys months ago, I'm going to be raw and real with you because there's no time to be anything other than raw and real. Your setups better be simple, they better be slicked down, and they better run, and you better vet them live fire whenever possible. And I really truly wish that I could fix this for everybody, but I can't. Some of you just don't have access to what I've got out here. For those of you that know me and you want to come out and train, let me know. I will do my best to pretzel my schedule and try to carve out a couple of hours to meet you out here and we can work together on some stuff. Because it's important that as a community, we work with each other. Okay, yeah. There are like 10 different rabbit trails that I want to go on right now, and I know that the video is just going to end up too long. So it's important that you get out and you work with your firearms as much as you possibly can, because it's getting ugly out here, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. Frankly, I don't think it's ever going to get better. I think from here on out until Jesus comes, it's just going to get progressively worse, progressively worse. And by the way, if you don't think it's getting progressively worse, it's because you've gone back to sleep and you've plugged back into the system and you're busy watching sports or whatever latest polished turd Hollywood is offering you on a platter. Folks, it's really bad and it's getting worse and it's getting worse. And on that, I love you all. God bless you all. Get those guns out in practice. Have a good one.